Every person reaches a moment when the room becomes quiet, the phone stops ringing, invitations become rare, and a strange question begins to grow inside the mind. Something feels different. At first, it feels like loss. It feels like life is moving forward without you. Yet psychology reveals a surprising truth. Some of the strongest minds begin their greatest transformation during seasons of solitude. While the world celebrates popularity, constant attention, and endless social activity, another path quietly shapes resilience, clarity, and emotional strength. This path rarely receives applause, because its greatest victories happen behind closed doors. That is why people often misunderstand it. They mistake solitude for failure, even though it can become the birthplace of confidence, discipline, and personal freedom. Researchers who study human behavior have discovered that periods of healthy solitude can improve self-awareness, strengthen emotional regulation, and reduce the influence of social pressure. Chase Hughes often speaks about observing behavior beneath the surface, and one powerful pattern appears again and again. People who become mentally stronger usually grow more selective with their attention, their relationships, and their time. This shift looks lonely from the outside. From the inside, it comes the foundation of lasting confidence. Every hour spent away from constant noise gives the brain space to organize thoughts, question old beliefs, and develop independent judgment. That process feels uncomfortable because silence removes every distraction. Suddenly, the only voice left to hear becomes your own. During this video, you will discover why solitude creates mental strength instead of weakness, why emotional independence makes manipulation far less effective, why personal growth quietly changes relationships, and why disciplined people often protect their peace instead of chasing approval. You will also learn why society encourages constant connection, even though endless interaction can slowly weaken clear thinking. Several hidden psychological principles explain this pattern, and each one reveals why spending time alone can become a powerful advantage instead of a painful setback. The final lesson may completely change the way you see your current situation. A season that appears empty today may actually be preparing you for greater opportunities tomorrow. Every section builds upon the previous one, revealing another piece of the psychological puzzle until the full picture becomes clear. By the end, you will understand why some of the strongest, calmest, and most successful people quietly walk a path that others rarely recognize. Their greatest strength grows where very few people choose to stay. Welcome to our channel, where psychology meets practical wisdom, and every video helps you understand human behavior on a deeper level. If you enjoy learning how the mind really works and want to develop stronger confidence, sharper observation, and greater emotional control, subscribe to the channel and join our growing community. Stay with us until the very end, because the final insight could completely reshape the way you think about being alone and reveal why this chapter of your life may be leading you in exactly the right direction. From the day people begin interacting with the world, invisible forces start shaping their decisions. Family expectations, school environments, friendships, social media, workplace culture, and public opinion quietly influence how people think, speak, dress, and even dream. Most of this influence happens so gradually that it feels completely normal. A person may believe every decision comes from personal choice, yet psychology shows that social influence affects behavior far more than people realize. This is known as conformity, the natural tendency to adjust thoughts and actions so they match the people around us. Humans evolved as social beings, and belonging to a group once increased the chances of survival. That ancient instinct still exists today. The brain often treats acceptance as safety and rejection as danger. Because of this, people sometimes follow opinions they quietly disagree with, simply because agreement feels easier than standing alone. This hidden pressure appears in everyday life. Someone chooses a career because relatives expect it. Another person stays in an unhealthy relationship because friends say it is the right decision. Someone buys expensive things to impress strangers. Another stays silent during an important conversation because speaking honestly feels risky. Little by little, outside voices become louder than the quiet voice inside. Eventually, people begin living according to expectations instead of personal values. After enough time passes, they may struggle to answer a simple question. Is this truly my choice, or did someone else choose this path for me? That question feels uncomfortable because the answer is rarely simple. Constant noise makes honest thinking difficult. Every opinion competes for attention. Every trend promises happiness. Every platform encourages comparison. Every conversation adds another layer of pressure. When the mind receives endless input, it has very little opportunity to reflect. Decisions become reactions instead of thoughtful choices. People start moving from one expectation to another, without realizing they are following a script written by everyone except themselves. This is where intentional solitude begins to change everything. Quiet moments remove the endless stream of outside opinions. Without constant approval or criticism, the mind slowly settles. Thoughts become clearer. Personal values become easier to recognize. Hidden fears rise to the surface, yet so do forgotten dreams. At first, this silence feels uncomfortable because it removes familiar distractions. The brain naturally reaches for another conversation, another notification, or another source of validation. Yet every moment spent resisting that urge strengthens independent thinking. It is important to understand that solitude and loneliness are two very different experiences. Loneliness is the painful feeling of missing meaningful connection. Intentional solitude is the conscious decision to create space for reflection, growth, and emotional balance. One drains energy because it focuses on absence. The other restores energy because it creates clarity. A person can feel lonely in a crowded room while someone else feels completely fulfilled during a quiet evening alone. The difference comes from purpose. Solitude becomes powerful when it is used as a tool for understanding yourself instead of escaping the world. During those quiet moments, the influence of other people slowly fades, and a stronger voice begins to emerge. It is the voice that has always been waiting beneath the noise, ready to guide decisions with confidence instead of conformity. Personal growth changes far more than habits or routines. It slowly reshapes identity, and every change in identity affects relationships. Psychology refers to this as an identity shift. As beliefs, values, and priorities evolve, the version of yourself that people once knew begins to fade. This process is usually quiet. One day you choose to spend an evening reading instead of going out. Another day you protect your time instead of saying yes to every request. You become more careful with your energy, more thoughtful with your words, and more selective about where your attention goes. These choices may seem small, yet they gradually create a different person. The people around you notice this change, even when they cannot explain it. Some admire it. Others become uncomfortable, because change disrupts the familiar patterns they have grown used to. Every relationship develops around expectations. Friends, family members, and coworkers build a picture of who you are based on repeated behavior. They know how you usually react, what you usually agree to, and the role you often play. When that pattern changes, the relationship also begins to change. Someone who always solved everyone else's problems may suddenly begin setting healthy boundaries. Someone who constantly looked for approval may start trusting personal judgment instead. Someone who always joined every gathering may decide that quiet evenings offer greater value. Those changes challenge the expectations other people have carried for years. Even positive growth can create confusion because familiarity feels safe. People naturally prefer the version of you that fits the relationship they already understand. This explains why self-improvement sometimes creates distance without arguments or dramatic events. Conversations become shorter because interests begin moving in different directions. Activities that once felt exciting slowly lose their appeal. Shared goals disappear, replaced by different priorities. One person wants comfort while another wants progress. One values routine while another seeks personal development. Neither person has to be wrong. They are simply moving toward different destinations. As that distance grows, both begin spending less time together. From the outside, it may appear as though the friendship faded for no reason, yet the real reason lies beneath the surface. Growth quietly changed the direction of one life while the other remained the same. This experience often feels painful, because people tend to measure relationships by their length instead of their purpose. A long friendship can still reach a natural ending when both people become different versions of themselves. Holding on to every connection simply because it has existed for years can prevent further growth. Healthy relationships encourage development instead of resisting it. They celebrate progress instead of feeling threatened by it. When support disappears each time you improve, that reaction reveals more about the relationship than about your success. Changing priorities also influence how time is spent. Hours once dedicated to endless conversations, unhealthy habits, or constant entertainment begin shifting toward learning, practicing skills, exercising, building discipline, or simply finding peace. Every choice carries an opportunity cost. Saying yes to one path often means leaving another behind. This naturally reduces contact with people whose lives revolve around different priorities. Over time, new connections begin to appear. They are usually built around shared values rather than shared history. These people respect your boundaries, encourage your progress, and understand the direction you are moving because they are walking a similar path themselves. Silence has a unique way of revealing parts of ourselves that everyday life easily hides. During busy days filled with conversations, notifications, entertainment, and endless responsibilities, the mind rarely has a chance to slow down. Every distraction keeps attention focused on something outside instead of something within. Psychology describes self-awareness as the ability to recognize your own thoughts, emotions, motives, and patterns of behavior. It sounds simple, yet genuine self-awareness is much rarer than people believe. A person can spend years staying busy without ever understanding why certain situations create fear, why certain words trigger anger, or why approval from others feels so important. Constant activity creates the perfect environment for emotional weaknesses to remain hidden because there is always another distraction waiting to pull attention away. Silence changes that pattern. When the outside world becomes quiet, thoughts that were buried beneath endless noise slowly begin to rise. Old disappointments return. Unfinished goals come back into focus. Personal doubts become impossible to ignore. This experience feels uncomfortable because the mind naturally prefers familiar distractions over difficult reflection. That is one reason people constantly reach for another conversation, another video, another social gathering, or another reason to stay occupied. Keeping the mind busy often feels easier than facing questions that have been waiting for honest answers. Yet those unanswered questions continue shaping behavior whether they are acknowledged or ignored. Another important change begins when external validation starts to disappear. During everyday life, praise, attention, compliments, and approval can quietly become emotional fuel. A successful post, positive feedback, or recognition from other people creates a temporary feeling of confidence. While encouragement has value, confidence built entirely on outside approval remains fragile. The moment approval fades, uncertainty begins to grow. Suddenly, self-worth depends on reactions that cannot be controlled. Silence exposes this dependence because there are fewer voices offering reassurance. At first, that absence feels unsettling. Gradually, something much stronger begins to develop. Instead of asking whether other people approve, the mind begins asking whether personal actions match personal values. That shift changes the foundation of confidence from public opinion to inner integrity. Facing uncomfortable thoughts also becomes part of the process. Everyone carries fears, regrets, insecurities, and memories they would rather avoid. Silence removes the escape routes that usually keep those emotions hidden. Rather than creating weakness, this experience offers an opportunity for emotional honesty. Honest people do more than admit mistakes to others. They first admit the truth to themselves. They recognize habits that hold them back. They acknowledge fears that influence decisions. They accept emotional wounds instead of pretending they do not exist. This level of honesty requires courage because the truth is rarely comfortable during the beginning of personal growth. As emotional honesty grows, self-knowledge becomes deeper. Patterns that once seemed confusing start making sense. Certain reactions reveal their true causes. Personal strengths become clearer, and weaknesses become easier to improve because they are finally understood instead of ignored. Confidence built on self-knowledge feels remarkably different from confidence built on attention. It remains steady during praise and during criticism because it comes from understanding yourself instead of depending on someone else's opinion. Silence becomes the place where that understanding quietly grows, shaping a stronger mind that trusts its own judgment with increasing clarity every single day. One of the greatest advantages of spending time alone is the opportunity to build mental discipline without distractions or pressure from others. Discipline is often misunderstood as something that appears during moments of motivation, yet psychology paints a very different picture. Real discipline grows through delayed gratification. the ability to choose a meaningful future reward over immediate comfort. This ability becomes much easier to develop during periods of intentional solitude, because fewer outside influences compete for attention. There is no audience waiting to applaud small victories, no pressure to impress anyone, and no expectation of instant recognition. Every decision becomes deeply personal. You either follow through with your commitment or you quietly break the promise you made to yourself. Those private moments reveal far more about character than public achievements ever could. When nobody is watching, excuses become easy. Skipping a workout, delaying an important task, staying up too late, or giving in to temporary comfort carries almost no immediate consequences. No one may ever know. Yet the brain remembers every choice. Each action strengthens a pattern that becomes easier to repeat. Choosing discipline today makes discipline slightly easier tomorrow. Choosing comfort repeatedly teaches the mind to seek immediate pleasure instead of long-term growth. This is how habits slowly shape identity. People often believe success begins with dramatic actions, but lasting change usually starts with small decisions repeated consistently over time. Waking up when the alarm rings, reading a few pages each day, practicing a skill for 1 extra hour, or keeping a promise even when motivation disappears may seem ordinary. Yet these quiet actions gradually create extraordinary results. Private habits hold remarkable power because they develop without external rewards. When someone continues improving without praise or recognition, the motivation begins shifting from outside approval to personal standards. That change creates a stronger form of discipline because it survives even when encouragement disappears. Instead of asking whether someone else will notice the effort, the focus becomes whether today's actions move closer to tomorrow's goals. This mindset builds emotional stability because progress no longer depends on applause. Satisfaction comes from knowing that another promise has been kept. This explains why highly successful people often spend countless hours practicing alone. Athletes repeat movements long after training sessions end. Musicians perform the same notes until every detail feels natural. Writers continue refining ideas long before readers see the finished work. Entrepreneurs solve problems during quiet evenings, while others seek constant entertainment. The public usually notices only the final achievement, while the real transformation happened during hundreds of invisible hours filled with patience, repetition, and steady effort. Solitude provides the environment where these hours become possible because attention remains focused instead of scattered across endless distractions. Over time, consistency creates something even more valuable than skill. It creates confidence. Genuine confidence does not appear because someone speaks positively or receives constant praise. It grows from repeated evidence that you can trust yourself. Every completed task becomes proof that your actions match your intentions. Every difficult day you continue moving forward strengthens that belief a little more. Eventually, confidence stops feeling like an emotion that comes and goes. It becomes a quiet certainty built through disciplined choices made in private, long before anyone else notices the results. One of the least discussed benefits of spending time alone is the way it strengthens emotional independence. This quiet change can completely transform how a person responds to pressure, persuasion, and manipulation. Psychology shows that manipulation rarely begins with force. It usually begins with emotional dependency. When someone feels a strong need for approval, acceptance, attention, or constant reassurance, that need can quietly become a point of influence. A manipulative person quickly learns where those emotional needs exist and uses them to guide decisions. Sometimes it happens through praise, sometimes through guilt, sometimes through fear of rejection or fear of losing a relationship. The method changes, yet the principle remains the same. The greater the emotional dependency, the easier it becomes for someone else to shape behavior without using direct control. This pattern appears more often than people realize. Someone stays silent because they fear disappointing another person. Someone agrees with opinions they do not believe because they want acceptance. Another keeps giving time and energy even after feeling exhausted, because they hope appreciation will finally arrive. Each decision may appear small on its own, yet together they create a habit of placing other people's approval above personal values. Over time, that habit weakens confidence because decisions stop coming from inner conviction and begin coming from emotional pressure. Intentional solitude interrupts this cycle. Spending time alone creates distance from constant social influence and gives the mind an opportunity to recognize emotional patterns that usually remain hidden. Without continuous conversations, messages, or outside opinions, people slowly begin noticing how often their choices were driven by the desire to please others. This awareness becomes the first step toward emotional independence. Instead of asking, "Will everyone approve of this decision?" the question gradually changes to, "Does this decision match my values and goals?" That simple shift changes everything, because the source of guidance moves from external reactions to internal principles. As emotional independence grows, personal boundaries naturally become stronger. Boundaries are often misunderstood as walls that push people away. In reality, healthy boundaries simply define what you will accept and what you will no longer tolerate. A person who values inner peace becomes more comfortable saying no, without carrying unnecessary guilt. They no longer feel responsible for solving every problem or meeting every expectation. They understand that kindness does not require constant self-sacrifice. Respect begins with respecting your own time, energy, and emotional well-being, before expecting others to do the same. Another powerful change happens when emotional needs become fewer and healthier. This does not mean losing the desire for friendship, love, or meaningful connection. Human relationships remain an important part of life. The difference is that emotional stability no longer depends entirely on another person's presence or approval. Compliments become enjoyable instead of necessary. Criticism becomes easier to evaluate without feeling personally destroyed. Rejection becomes information rather than proof of personal failure. This creates a remarkable sense of psychological freedom because fewer emotional buttons remain available for others to press. Decisions become calmer, reactions become more thoughtful, and relationships become healthier because they are built on mutual respect rather than emotional dependence. In that quiet space, influence loses much of its power, while inner strength continues to grow through steady emotional independence. As people become comfortable spending time alone, something begins to change that often surprises them. Their standards quietly rise. This change does not come from feeling superior to others or believing they deserve special treatment. It grows from a deeper understanding of personal worth. Psychology describes this through the ideas of scarcity and self-worth. People naturally place greater value on things that are limited. Time, attention, emotional energy, and genuine trust all become more meaningful when they are treated as valuable resources instead of unlimited supplies. During earlier stages of life, it is easy to give these resources away without much thought. A person may spend hours trying to impress people who barely care, saying yes to every request, or remaining available simply because they fear being left out. After experiencing intentional solitude, that pattern often begins to fade. Time starts to feel different. Every hour carries greater importance because quiet reflection reveals how quickly life moves. Instead of filling every moment with random activity, people begin asking whether an experience truly deserves their attention. They become more selective with commitments, conversations, and daily habits. Activities that once felt exciting may suddenly seem empty because they no longer contribute to personal growth or inner peace. This shift can confuse people who expect the old version of you to remain the same. They may interpret your selectiveness as distance or coldness, even though the real change comes from recognizing that every choice carries a cost. Every unnecessary distraction takes time away from something that genuinely matters. Alongside this new respect for time comes a stronger desire to protect emotional energy. Energy is often overlooked because it cannot be measured like money, yet it influences every decision, conversation, and relationship. Constant drama, endless conflict, and one-sided interactions slowly drain emotional strength. People who spend time alone begin noticing these patterns more clearly because they become familiar with the feeling of peace. Once peace becomes part of everyday life, unnecessary stress feels far more noticeable. As a result, they naturally step away from situations that repeatedly create exhaustion. This is not avoidance, it is careful management of emotional resources. They understand that protecting energy allows them to remain patient, focused, and emotionally balanced during moments that truly matter. Relationships also begin to change. Instead of collecting acquaintances or chasing approval, attention shifts toward genuine connection. Conversations become more meaningful, because they are built on honesty instead of convenience. Respect becomes more important than popularity. Trust becomes more valuable than constant attention. A smaller circle no longer feels like a weakness because quality begins replacing quantity. Relationships are chosen with greater intention rather than accepted simply because they are available. This creates stronger emotional stability because each connection is built on shared values instead of temporary circumstances. Over time, these healthier relationships contribute to greater long-term well-being. Support becomes more genuine. Communication becomes more open. Boundaries receive greater respect. Emotional safety replaces constant uncertainty. Instead of feeling surrounded yet misunderstood, people experience a deeper sense of connection with those who truly appreciate who they have become. As standards continue to rise, every decision reflects a clearer understanding of personal value, making time, energy, and relationships feel like precious investments rather than resources to be given away without careful thought. One of the greatest misunderstandings in human behavior is the belief that the loudest person in the room is also the strongest. Modern culture often rewards visibility. People who speak the most, react the fastest, or constantly seek attention are frequently viewed as confident and influential. Yet psychology offers a different perspective through the concept of social perception. Social perception explains how people form opinions about others based on visible behavior, facial expressions, body language, and communication style. These first impressions happen quickly, and they are often incomplete. A quiet person may be judged as insecure, shy, or lacking confidence, simply because they choose to speak less. In reality, silence and insecurity are very different things. Some people remain quiet because they are uncertain. Others remain quiet because they have learned that observation often provides more value than constant conversation. Calm behavior is also widely misunderstood. During emotional situations, people often expect immediate reactions. They expect raised voices, defensive explanations, or quick decisions driven by frustration. When someone remains calm instead, others may assume they do not care, or that they lack the courage to respond. The truth is often the opposite. Emotional control requires far greater mental effort than emotional reaction. Remaining steady during conflict means the mind continues processing information while emotions are trying to take control. This ability allows thoughtful decisions instead of impulsive ones. Calm people are usually paying close attention to details that emotional minds completely overlook. While others focus on winning the moment, they focus on understanding the situation. True confidence rarely needs constant attention because it grows from internal certainty rather than public recognition. A person who fully trusts personal abilities feels very little need to prove them during every conversation. This explains why genuinely confident individuals often avoid unnecessary arguments. They understand that every disagreement does not deserve a response. They choose carefully where to invest time and emotional energy. Their silence should never be confused with fear. Very often, it reflects self-control. They recognize that speaking only becomes valuable when words improve the situation. Otherwise, listening becomes the stronger choice. Observation slowly becomes one of their greatest advantages. While others are busy talking, explaining, interrupting, or searching for approval, quiet people gather information. They notice changes in tone, hesitation in speech, shifts in body language, repeated behavior, and emotional patterns that pass unnoticed by most people. Human behavior follows consistent habits, and careful observation reveals those habits over time. A single conversation may reveal very little, yet repeated observation creates a surprisingly accurate understanding of character. This skill becomes especially valuable because people often reveal their true intentions through consistent actions rather than carefully chosen words. As this habit of observation grows stronger, decisions become wiser, and relationships become clearer. Trust develops through evidence instead of assumptions. Respect is given based on consistent behavior rather than first impressions. Emotional reactions lose their influence because patient observation creates a broader perspective. Quiet strength continues growing beneath the surface, often invisible to those who measure confidence by volume instead of wisdom. While the world keeps rewarding attention, those who remain calm keep collecting something far more valuable. They collect understanding, and understanding quietly becomes one of the strongest forms of power a person can possess. Every season in life serves a purpose, even the ones that feel quiet, uncertain, or disconnected from everyone else. Solitude often feels endless while living through it, yet very few chapters last forever. The deeper value of this experience comes from the strength it quietly builds beneath the surface. Psychology describes this process as psychological resilience, the ability to recover from challenges, adapt to change, and continue moving forward despite setbacks. Resilience is rarely created during easy moments. It develops when people face uncertainty without allowing it to define their future. Time spent alone creates countless opportunities to practice this ability because every difficult emotion becomes a chance to respond with patience instead of panic. Every challenge handled independently becomes another piece of evidence that you are stronger than you once believed. During these quiet periods, something important begins happening inside the mind. Independent thinking becomes stronger. Without constant opinions directing every decision, people gradually learn to evaluate situations through their own judgment. They begin asking better questions, considering different perspectives, and making choices based on personal values instead of social pressure. This ability becomes incredibly valuable because life constantly presents situations where popular opinion offers little guidance. Independent thinkers remain steady during uncertainty because they have already practiced trusting their own reasoning. That confidence grows slowly through repeated experience rather than sudden inspiration. Solitude also prepares people for opportunities they cannot yet see. Most significant opportunities require qualities that develop long before success becomes visible. Patience, discipline, emotional control, adaptability, and self-awareness rarely appear overnight. They are strengthened during ordinary days when progress feels invisible. While others spend every free moment searching for distraction, those who embrace solitude continue improving skills, expanding knowledge, and building stronger habits. Months or even years later, an opportunity appears that seems unexpected to everyone else. From the outside, it looks like luck. In reality, that opportunity simply meets a person who has been quietly preparing long before anyone was paying attention. It is important to remember that the purpose of solitude is never permanent isolation. Human beings naturally benefit from meaningful relationships built on trust, respect, and genuine understanding. The goal is not to avoid people or reject connection. The goal is to become emotionally strong enough that relationships become a choice instead of a necessity. This creates a healthier foundation because fear no longer controls decisions. Friendships are chosen because they add value to life. Partnerships grow through mutual respect rather than emotional dependence. Time spent with others becomes richer because it comes from genuine appreciation instead of fear of being alone. A remarkable transformation takes place when this mindset becomes part of everyday life. The absence of constant companionship no longer creates panic. Silence becomes familiar instead of frightening. Independence becomes a source of peace instead of loneliness. Confidence grows through experience, and resilience becomes part of everyday character. Looking back, the quiet season that once felt confusing begins to reveal its purpose. Every difficult moment, every challenge faced alone, every uncomfortable decision, and every lesson learned in silence contributed to a stronger version of yourself. Being alone does not always mean life has taken a wrong turn. Sometimes it quietly signals that you are leaving behind an old identity and growing into the person you were always capable of becoming. As we reach the end of this journey, one message stands above everything else. Stop fearing solitude. Start using it. Time alone is not automatically a sign that life is falling apart. Very often, it is the space where your strongest qualities begin to grow. Throughout this video, you have seen how solitude creates clarity by removing the noise that constantly shapes your decisions. You have learned that real growth naturally changes relationships because every new version of yourself brings different priorities. You have discovered that discipline is built in private, during the moments when nobody is watching, and every small choice quietly shapes your future. You have also seen why emotional independence protects your peace by making you less dependent on approval and less vulnerable to manipulation. Most importantly, true confidence does not come from attention or popularity. It comes from self-mastery, knowing who you are, trusting your judgment, and staying true to your values even when the path feels lonely. Now take a moment to reflect on your own life. Are you truly experiencing loneliness, or are you simply going through a season of growth that feels unfamiliar? That answer could completely change the way you see your current situation. The quiet chapter you are living today may be preparing you for opportunities, relationships, and strengths that would never have developed any other way. Every step you take toward becoming emotionally stronger, mentally calmer, and more disciplined is an investment in the person you are becoming tomorrow. If this video gave you a new perspective or helped you understand yourself a little better, please support the channel by giving this video a like. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our future videos on psychology, human behavior, emotional intelligence, and self-improvement. Share this video with someone who may need this message today, because one insight at the right moment can change the direction of a life. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.